Okay, welcome to our second hour of the afternoon and early evening show. Obviously, we've been going through a lot to catch up on so much activity over the weekend and the day, given what's happening in Denver and how closely we're monitoring the show trial to take Trump off the ballot there. I want to bring in Dr. Bradley Thayer. First off, Dr. Thayer, we got a lot to go through with you. You've written a number of great pieces and a lot of great analysis that we haven't had a chance to get to during the speakers fight. But since this week is going to be this huge fight over the funding and the bifurcation of Ukraine from the spending in Israel, also in the fight on the southern border. Let's pull the camera back for a second. Give me an establishing shot. The CCP, their hand in all of this, in this massive misdirection play to get us sucked back into another Middle Eastern war at the same time that they're making huge moves in the South China Sea and in the ramp up to their assault on Taiwan. Just give me a couple of minutes on the CCP and the Persians.
First, we need to recognize, as Reagan did in March '83, when he called the Soviet Union the focus of evil in the modern world. He called out the Soviet Communist Party for what it was, an evil and malevolent force that oppressed the Soviet people of the empire, and was a major threat to international stability and American interests and the American people. So too, today, the CCP is the focus of evil in the modern world. It's the center of gravity of the major national security threats the United States faces because of its evil nature, how it oppresses the Chinese people, why it's a direct threat to American national security, its support for Russia. For example, Russia would have never invaded Ukraine if they had not gotten the green light from communist dictator Xi Jinping. Iran would have never supported Hamas and other entities like Hezbollah in the attack against Israel if they had not been green lighted by communist dictator Xi Jinping. So we need to recognize that Reagan was certainly right in his characterization of communism as an enemy. Soviet Union is dead. However, the Chinese Communist Party, sadly, is still very much alive. And that's the locus. That's the center of gravity of this unrest. Their support for Tehran is going to be ongoing. It's far more than just support for the nuclear program or oil, natural gas purchases. It's Iran as a weapon to be used against the United States and U.S. interest, just as Hezbollah is, just as Hamas is, and just as Russia is. They're all tools. Also, Steve, very importantly, as you've stressed before, this is distracting us. There's only so much bandwidth that the U.S. intelligence community has, or our allies have, or the U.S. military has, to be focused on Ukraine, to be focused on the Middle East and Southwest Asia. Means we're not looking at Taiwan. We're not looking at the Philippines. We need to anticipate that Xi's not done as an arsonist. He's going to light more fires on the Korean Peninsula. It's quite likely North Korea is going to try something to cause a crisis on that peninsula to further occupy our attention in preparation for moving against Taiwan and or the Philippines and further expansion in the South China Sea. So he's getting what he wants in terms of distraction. The last point is he's also doing this because he's supremely vulnerable, and he knows he is. The fact that he's had to replace ministers, so many generals, so many ministers, former officials, is all because he recognizes that he's vulnerable to being overthrown. And so in a paranoid fashion, he's tightening his grip on the Chinese Communist Party leadership.
Hang over a second. I want to make sure people understand this. Because his economy is quite frankly beyond shaky, given the Ponzi scheme they've been running. In this moment, he knows that he's got to gin up Han nationalism, Chinese nationalism to a fever pitch against the foreign devils, to focus on the reunification with Taiwan. One of the ways he's doing that is a long-term strategic plan on the consolidation of the Eurasian landmass with the Persians, with the KGB, with Erdogan. Erdogan came out this weekend and showed us his true colors, right? in that moment, what I find surprising, in that moment when it all has to converge and come together, why does it look like he's decapitating part of the PLA's leadership, which he's been doing for the last couple of years, but now even at the moment of crisis, the moment of battle, and also it looks like senior members of the regime in both the areas of finance and commerce, sir?
Because of his profound insecurity. He knows he's illegitimate, and so what he's doing is, in a paranoid fashion, he's tightening his grip on leadership through the anti-corruption campaign, Steve, which he's been running for years. It's a way of getting rid of his enemies, real or imagined. And then with the leadership, the embarrassment of Hu Jintao in October of 2022, where he was ejected in front of Xi Jinping and the highest levels of the Chinese Communist Party leadership. This is an individual who recognizes that, as you observe, the economy's in real trouble. He's got profound social problems, but his greatest crisis is the illegitimacy of the Communist Party of China and his rule over it. So we need to expect, as you said, that he's going to be looking at other causes, other elements in international politics: attack against the Philippines, attack against Taiwan, further expansion against India, and in the South China Sea, or against Japan or the U.S., right? We need to recognize Guam's a target. Hawaii is. The United States homeland itself is a direct military target of the Chinese Communist Party. There's a lot of trouble ahead as he moves forward. That's why this is the time to get rid of him. This is the time to put pressure on the Chinese Communist Party to evict them from power. Sadly, we're not focused on the center of gravity, right? We're focused on other issues, however important, or the humanitarian component there. The center of gravity in a strategic term is Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party. And that's what we need to get rid of, and that's going to improve.
Is there any doubt in your mind when you look at the evidence that they are in back of the Persians, because the Persian are the lead element there, right? With the proxy armies and the Houthis and the missile attacks, all of it, that their long-term, this kicked off with the PLA's had a long-standing relationship with the Persian army, but that the underwriting of the long-term output deals that gave the mullahs actually the wherewithal to do this. Is there any doubt in your mind that the CCP is in league with the Persians to start this second front and to distract from, they've got the chemical warfare attack with fentanyl and the invasion of the southern border with military age, fighting age males from mainland China. You've got this front in the Middle East and now in Ukraine to distract the Americans from the principal focus on Taiwan?
Not at all. Of course, Iran would not have done this if they hadn't had the backing of China, because Iran recognizes that it could escalate. That they could quite easily find themselves in a conflict with the United States and its allies over this struggle. And if that's the case, then they're going to need help. Russia's not going to be able to offer sufficient help. It's only China that would be able to offer that help. So they know what they're doing in Tehran, as well as they know what they're doing in Beijing. But Tehran is a sideshow, Steve, right? The center of gravity is Beijing. And that's where the focus ought to be, to deal with the threats, so many of the threats that we face in international politics. As Reagan recognized, the Soviets were that center of evil. They were the focus of evil in the modern world. So too, we need to recognize, we need to have leadership. We need to recognize that Beijing is in that role today. And if you get rid of that issue in Beijing, if you restore the greatness of the Chinese people to themselves by eliminating that odious and Western ideology, which is Marxism, Leninism, then you're going to see that Tehran is going to be in big trouble. They're going to recognize they can't do what they've been doing in terms of their arson. And Russia will as well without their Chinese ally. So the center of gravity is everything, and we need to maintain that, obviously, front and center in our strategic thought and planning.
I want to go through because I know people that I've heard now this from, not just from Miles and other people before he went to jail, or people around him. I now know it from multiple other sources that Wan Shishan is spending an incredible amount of time. Remember, he's kind of the theoretician of Xi, but he's spending a tremendous amount of time over the last couple of years on this topic of legitimacy of the Chinese Communist Party. Why would power players like Wan Shishan and Xi, who run the whole deal, why would they, 70 years after the America turned it over to Mao Zedong, the State Department, the communist-infested State Department and General Marshall, turned over the Chinese people, Lao Baijing in mainland China, to Mao and the Chinese revolutionaries? Why would they at this late date? Walk us through the sources of legitimacy. I keep hearing that he is going through he's a very bright guy, as you know, going through a massive, Bloomberg introduced him in Singapore a couple of years ago as the most powerful guy in the world. Why would Wan Shishan spend a second, given their grip on things and their master plan rolling out through all of the Eurasian landmass with One Belt, One Road, and having the Americans that look like distracted and spread all over Hell's Half Acre? Why would a guy like that spend a second on the sources of legitimacy of the Chinese Communist Party?
Because he knows the Chinese Communist Party is illegitimate. It's a product of a Western ideology, Marxism, Leninism. It was imposed by the Soviets and the Communist International, whose support really allowed Mao to come to power. And there was no mandate from the Chinese people. There was no voting. The Chinese people didn't vote for this in any capacity. And the malpractice and gross human rights abuses they've committed against the Chinese people year after year after year, the aggression that they've had in international politics against Tibet immediately in 1950, while at the same time fighting the U.S. October 1950, they're conquering Tibet and they're starting their intervention against the U.S. and UN forces on the Korean Peninsula. This is a hyper-aggressive and illegitimate regime. And because they know that they're illegitimate, they have that sensitivity, right? Which is why he's constantly discussing that issue, why it's always in the back of their mind, why they always talk about their greatness at the same time talking about how oppressed they are, right? It's either one or the other in terms of it. So they recognize that they're illegitimate and they recognize that they're vulnerable. And by having a variety of distractions, they've been saved time and again, either by American governments or spies or other actors. But Steve, it's also key, just finally, to recognize as well that although they're held in place by terror, they're held in place, of course, by this advanced surveillance state. Like the Soviet Communist Party, they can also fall just as rapidly. They can collapse just as rapidly if we're able to bring pressure against them by supporting the Chinese people, by working through the diaspora, by people of goodwill, and by American leadership, American and allied leadership. We'd be able to bring them under pressure. But sadly, we're not. So again, it's a lost opportunity while he's undergoing these protests. Well, you had the blank page protests, if you remember, starting just about a year ago, almost a year ago now, which lasted so long and that in terms of post-COVID lockdown protests, but they were really a protest against the regime. There are all sorts of opportunities that we have if we could capitalize on it to decenter this regime, to evict it from power. But it needs leadership and it needs support, and sadly, we simply don't have it. So time and again, this is another lost opportunity. As in 1989, as in 91, 92, 93, there was a similar opportunity. It's just going to pass. And these guys seem to have another opportunity to remain in power. So that legitimacy issue is front and center because they know they're a gang of thugs. and they rule by tyranny, and they have no place, as communism does have any place, in the 21st century. It belongs certainly on the ash heap of history. Reagan had a plan to bring that about against the Soviets. Sadly, we don't have a plan to bring that about against the Chinese Communist Party.
I want to talk when you talk about not spies, but also assets and the people that the CCP uses all the time. I want to be very specific about Pillsbury. Michael Pillsbury's got one of the big slots over at Heritage. Supposed to be a leader. He was in and out of the White House all the time. He wrote a terrific book, The 100-Year Marathon, which I thought was a good primer to get people to think about it. But he's always pulled his punches when it comes to the hardcore like ourselves, which the CCP is the focus of evil in the modern world and must be taken down. That you're not going to have peace in the world while you have a criminal element ruling Lao Beijing out of Beijing. So walk me through Pillsbury's in Beijing and been sending us some tweets and some commentary that is quite suspect. Can you walk me through that, Dr. Bradley Thayer?
Sure. Mike Pillsbury and Joe Nye both offered comments at the 8th China Global Think Tank Innovation Forum, October 23rd, and so about a week ago. And Pillsbury's comments were reported by Chinese media. Transcript was reported. And Mike Pillsbury made two major arguments. One was, in essence, he's embracing engagement again. And this is the fundamental problem, Steve, you've identified, this deep problem of can we break the elite's desire to sustain engagement with the Chinese Communist Party, which basically funds them and keeps them in power. So the first argument he made was, in essence, an argument for engagement. He identified that a problem in the Sino-American relationship was a lack of communication. Whenever I hear that, I think about Frederick the Great when he was asked about the province of Silesia. He was fighting wars with Maria Theresa of Austria. And he was asked whether that was a misunderstanding. And he said, no, it's not a misunderstanding. We both want the same thing, right? We both want Silesia, and only one of us is going to have it. So there's no misunderstanding in the Sino-American Cold War. America is seeking to defend itself and its interests, and the Chinese Communist Party is seeking to take it. And to dominate in consequence. So he made the argument the problem is a lack of communication. There were about 50 channels he observed during the Trump administration that Trump shut down, and that Biden only has restored about 5 of those channels of communication. That compels us to ask, well, why should we have any, right? It's not an issue of communication. It's an issue of fundamental disagreements, an odious and tyrannical regime fighting the United States and its allies. The second argument he made was the One China principle. One China policy used to be the foundation of Sino-American relations. And he was lamenting that the Trump administration skewed that too far. And Mike Pompeo specifically, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, now out of office, obviously, had made 2 trips to Taiwan and was seeking to or calling for recognition of Taiwan, abandoning the One China policy. 2 points there. First, the One China policy is often misunderstood. It was what the United States said in 1972 and afterwards is we acknowledge that China says, right, that the PRC says, People's Republic of China, that they have a One China principle. We acknowledge that, but we're not taking any type of issue in response to that or regarding that. The second point to make is fundamentally, Pompeo is right. What we need to do is recognize Taiwan and protect it from the inevitable assault, which is coming soon, probably quite soon, from the Chinese Communist Party. And that assault could be part of a larger campaign against Japan and the U.S., or it could be coupled with an attack against the Philippines, or it could be just against Taiwan itself. And Americans need to remember why Taiwan matters. Taiwan matters economically because of chip production, right? It's a robust economy that makes so many of the computer chips that we use. Second, it's a key military and intelligence base for the United States, should the U.S. choose to use it as a military base. Thirdly, its geostrategic position, right? It bottles up People's Republic of China's access to the Pacific Ocean. And then lastly, because of political warfare, Taiwan shows what China might have been, what it could have been if the communists hadn't come to power. Mainland China could be just as vibrant, could be a democracy, multi-party democracy, and the Chinese people could be as free as the Taiwanese people, which is why it's an ideological threat. Right? We talked before about the vulnerabilities of the party, but a great vulnerability is also the success of Taiwan as a vibrant democracy. So Pillsbury was making those points. I think those points are certainly able to be contested, and each of them should be contested in any forum. People are free to make what they want.
But hang on. But I want to go. This is, I mean, and I don't know why he's at Heritage, and using that as a cover or whatever. He's in China. A fundamental tenet of President Trump's taking on the Chinese Communist Party was the understanding, and by the way, in Hong Kong, I think we blew it because we could have taken a tougher stand in Hong Kong when the CCP moved to basically consolidate Hong Kong. But Taiwan, it's always been the policy of the Trump from the very beginning. We took the phone call. Remember, we took in the transition, we took a phone call from the president of Taiwan, which freaked out the CCP and had Tiger Yang and his guys fly over to see Jarrett, myself, Navarro, and General Flynn a couple days after that. We purposely took the phone call to send a message. There was a new strategic order that our focus was to take down the Chinese Communist Party. It's not about engagement. It's about confrontation. In that confrontation, a big part of that is a free and democratic Taiwan. So how does Michael Pillsbury over there questioning that we were a central part? That is what a collaborationist does. Is he a collaboration? He's always been, there's always been a lot of questions about Pillsbury and his loyalty. And it's documented. At key times in the Trump, and this was, he was on Fox and he'd be on Tucker and he'd go in the Oval Office. But if you watch this guy closely, like the China hawks watch it closely, you see that this guy's playing both sides against the middle and maybe even playing more for their side by his own record. And this right here, particularly in what we're doing and with the election coming up, and I would argue maybe as important election, not as, I guess, the presidential election, but the second most important election of 2024 is going to be the one that happens in January in Taiwan, where they try to have, with the CCP once again, try to use this Terry Guo and those guys to somehow have the Kuomintang take the presidency and then try to have a rapprochement with the CCP. How can Pillsbury be in Beijing right now in the middle of a beginning of a third world war where they've been at war with us on unrestricted warfare in years, taking the side of the CCP? That's a pure collaborationist. Is it not? Or am I missing something here? Dr. Bradley Thayer.
He's going to have to speak for himself. I mean, this is a symptom of it. This is a symptom of the deeper problem, Steve, which is think tanks in D.C., media, our elite, as you well know, our business community, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Wall Street, are all tied to the engagement school of thought. And the idea that you can make the Chinese Communist Party a partner and you'll get rich together. The Chinese Communist Party will essentially host manufacturing from the United States, and there's going to be untold billions of dollars to be made. As Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo said, of course, right, we have to preserve that over $700 billion relationship. So the engagement school has strategic thought in the United States in a headlock, and that has to be broken. We need to identify the CCP is the enemy of the United States, and we should be doing everything we can to defeat it. It is the center of gravity, and it needs to be defeated. So individuals who are touting the advantages of engagement or the necessity of engagement need to be questioned and actively questioned about, well, what did you get from your engagement? You've been doing it for 40 years. And what has engagement gotten us? Well, it got China rich.
Yeah.
You moved China from about 1.6% of world gross domestic product in 1990 to about 19% of world gross domestic product.
I tell you what, Dr. Thayer, hang on for 1 second. We'll take a break. I want to hold you through the break on this entire situation. As Dr. Thayer says so succinctly, the CCP is the focus of evil in the modern world, full stop. Full stop. The focus of evil in the modern world. And any businessman, politician, think tank person that's in business with them, you are part of that evil. Got to call it like it is. Short break. Back in a moment.
War Room Battleground with Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, Dr. Thayer, in this whole thing with Pillsbury, he's taken some shots at one of the greatest, most patriotic living Americans. That'd be Captain James Fennell, United States Navy, who was head of intel, I think, for Pacific Fleet and 7th Fleet. He gave that monumental speech that essentially gave up his career. He would have been an admiral if he hadn't warned America back in the Obama administration that the Chinese Communist Party was rolling and looking towards a military victory in the Pacific. And Pillsbury, who's always been kind of a collaborationist, always a big supporter of engagement, particularly while he's over there talking smack with the CCP. He's taken some shots at Captain Fennell. Can you give me some particulars, sir?
Well, Jim Fennell was a dear friend of mine, and I think he's a great American patriot who's been fighting the CCP his entire professional career since he came into the Navy. And then after he left the Navy, that struggle has continued. It consumes him day after day without let up, Steve. As you well know, day after day, Jim Fennell is fighting the Chinese Communist Party. And it has cost him immeasurably, and because of his patriotism and because he truly identifies and understands the threat, he keeps at it without let-up, unceasingly. And we need more Jim Fennell. That's exactly what we need in the future. There are very few, sadly, and we can count on the fingers of one hand or maybe two hands the number of individuals who are in that camp. Too many folks are captured by the engagement school, Steve, as you well know. They're not Jim Fennell. They're not fighting the Chinese Communist Party, but they're seeing which way the wind blows with respect to it and refusing to give up the benefits of the engagement school. That has to end. We need think tanks in Washington that are focused on this threat without variation, like a laser, be focused on the center of gravity, which is the CCP. That's what we need at this time. And Jim Fennell, that great patriot, that great American, is attempting to do this, and I proudly write with him, and I proudly support him. I don't know really the nature of Mike Pillsbury's posts on X. They seem to be a bit curious to me, a little bit confusing to me in terms of what actually is going on with them, and I don't know the source of the animus certainly between them.
The source of the animus is simple. The source of the animus is simple. Let me be blunt. Captain Fennell has forgotten more about the Chinese Communist Party and its strategy and its plan to become a hegemon than Mike Pillsbury will ever know, number one. And I'm sure that drives you nuts. Also, Pillsbury's hardcore American patriot that understands that the world is not free until Lao Beijing is free, and Lao Beijing is not free until we have the complete and total destruction and thrown into the dustbin of history, the Chinese Communist Party, of which Pillsbury's not just a buddy, maybe a partner. And he should come forward, and Heritage should come forward and talk about Pillsbury's to be in this time when they are underwriting and in business with the Persians. When we're being sucked into a Middle East war, one of the chief architect of this being the Chinese Communist Party, where you see their hands everywhere in this, particularly financially and strategically. It's not the time to be in Beijing being a collaborationist. Just not. It's a bad look. And that's why the animus comes. Dr. Thayer, we got to bounce. Where do people go to get your social media and all your writings?
Bradley Thayer at Getter or on Truth, Steve, and thank you very much for calling attention to this issue. I would just add that Jim Fennell was a voice in the military when there were very few actually in the U.S. military who identified the Chinese Communist Party threat, and so he's been unwavering.
Jim Fennell risked his career. Jim Fennell showed you the type of character he has and the type of man he is. He put his career, he knew this would end his career. And there's very few people who have loved the Navy like Jim Fennell loved the Navy. And he knew he was going to end his career by doing this warning that had to happen because, quite frankly, too many naval officers, too many people in the Pentagon, too many people in the Obama administration in cahoots with the oligarchs on Wall Street and the tech oligarchs who are making money hand over fist. Fennell was Cassandra. Fennell was the first kind of official technical warning, and he paid for it with his career. That's how much he believed in it. And Jim Fennell was right, and everything that's happened since then, Jim Fennell's been correct. And you go back and look at that speech he gave, I think at the Naval Academy. He's a hero.
But he just doesn't love the Navy, Steve. He loves America, and that comes through every day. And he knew what was happening, as you said. He tried to call attention to it, and he paid enormous costs for it.
Enormous costs. Dr. Thayer, where do people get you?
Getter at Bradley Thayer and Truth at Bradley Thayer are great places to see me, and centerforsecuritypolicy.org has all of my writings. Thank you very much, Steve. Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, brother. Let's go to Rome now and Ben Harnwell. Ben, you're about to become, after you had this fight in the House, it was really about what you cover, but now it's going to be front burner because the firestorm that's about to hit us, folks, with Mitch McConnell and these collaborationists that collaborate with the illegitimate Biden regime in the Senate, about to hit us full force with Mike Johnson and the folks in the House, as Johnson is adamant about bifurcating the Ukraine part from the Israel part of any funding that would take place. Ben, just get us up to speed on Ukraine, because you never really got much information out of there. But now it's like totally suppressed, and all you're hearing about is the winter is here, the spring offense is over because of the bad roads. Did Zelensky and these guys take any real territory? I know they're outside of Bakhmut again, where they lost, 15,000 troops over a strategic hamlet, a strategic crossroad. They're fighting back over there. But is it true that the Russians have taken back, I don't know, half of the ground they gave up? It's very confusing to get. It's like Orwell said in homage to Patagonia, that you couldn't tell everything that came out of the Spanish Civil War on both sides was a lie. Ben Harnwell.
That's a very good summary of the situation, Steve. I'm not there in Ukraine, and therefore I'm very hesitant to base my opinion on sources of information that I know without any doubt whatsoever have been lying to us from the beginning. So that's difficult. I have the same view actually as I do to Israel as Ukraine. When it comes to military advances or retreats, I'm not trusting anything anyone is saying on either side, simply because it's too unreliable. And we know, as I repeat myself here, we know the sort of our mainstream media are lying to us about what's going on over there in both cases, in both wars, because for different reasons, or perhaps really for the same reason, and fundamentally, which is that they are stooges of the military-industrial complex. They just want war because war is profitable for those who own the means of production. So yeah, I mean, up in there is talk in Ukraine. You know, it's like the tide coming in, tide coming out, about marginal gains on both sides. But really, it's always the other factor, Steve, in having an accurate grasp on what's going on in Ukraine is because the sources of information, as unreliable and misleading and deceptive as they are drying up because attention is being switched rather violently to the new shiny thing, which is Israel. So that compounds the difficulty of knowing the truth of the situation. There is something I would like to talk about. You mentioned McConnell now and the Senate and the new speaker's insistence that Ukraine and Israel are considered separately. I'll open a very quick bracket and repeat what I said last time on the show and also on Getter. My own personal opinion on this, and I'm going to carry on with just neutral analysis. I'm opposed to the West. In both cases, Ukraine and Israel. I'm totally opposed to financial or military support in either case. With Ukraine, same thing as Israel. Close brackets.
Why are you? I understand the bifurcation. I understand we got to get the border settled first, but particularly if Mike Johnson is committed to, and there's been a huge fight all afternoon to do this, he's going to get an offset. So there's no more adding to the deficit. There's no more borrowing money. He's going to do dollar for dollar cuts in other budget areas, particularly USAID and others, to get to the $14 billion. Why do you oppose that?
I've heard so many promises to the American people. I say this constantly. I'm not American. I don't live in America. I don't have any intentional plans to go and live in America. But I have seen so many assurances to Americans that that spending commitments will be met on dollar for dollar basis, and it won't add to the debt. It never comes to pass. I like what I see of this new speaker, but fundamentally at this point, America has a debt crisis, which is an existential crisis. Forgive me, Steve, if I say I will believe this when I see it. And we also don't know because, of course, the Congress can draft its spending bills, but it needs the president to sign them. And the presidential veto, implicit or explicit, can concentrate minds. And, of course, we're not dealing with MAGA Mike Johnson here and what he wants. We're dealing with MAGA Mike versus the Uniparty, which is the capacity of the rump of the GOP with the rump of the Democrats to just shaft American interests and continue funding their favorite pastimes. So look, forgive me, I will believe it when I see it. Up until now, however, look, with regards to Israel, I'll say this: we just saw less than a month before Hamas invaded Israel, we saw. The World Watch didn't say anything, didn't have any headlines. We saw an exercise of Azerbaijan ethnically cleanse Nagorno-Karabakh of over 100,000 ethnic Armenians. Nobody said anything, right? Nothing. No Secretary General of the UN, no Ursula von der Leyen, nothing. Just everyone just stood by and watched it happen. Israel will probably have to do what it needs to do to protect its own national security and its integrity, right? What I think, however, given the dynamics of leading towards Third World War with a nuclear component, Israel would temper its actions if it didn't have the world's largest military power behind its back, saying, "Look, we've got you here. You do what you need to do, and we'll stand by it." It will certainly.
Is that going to be lost?
Israel.
Yeah. How's this playing out in Europe? What concerns me is here the progressive element in this country has brought this on this. I mean, you've got these college campuses are out of control right now. Some of the threats on Jewish students it's pretty hard to believe. They threatened to slash their throats at Cornell the other day. The Cooper, and these are super liberal schools. At Cooper Union, they had some Jewish kids caught in the library that if the door had given way, I think these kids have been torn apart right there in the library on video camera. And it's getting worse. I mean, the Brooklyn Bridge was taken over the weekend. this Palestinian student group, which is a combination of Antifa, Black Lives Matter, all these radical groups, is metastasizing every day here in the United States. You're seeing fights in streets of Chicago. It's in Europe. I'm seeing the same thing. How is this? How is the Gaza situation playing out in the capitals of Europe?
Steve, this is like a really important thing here. On the one hand, you have the rump studentry, which has been increasingly woke. Look, I want to cite here an article, if Memphis would very kindly put it up. This is the second article I sent through. It's headlined, Democrats Splinter Over Israel as the Young and Diverse Left Rages at Biden. This is an analysis how what you're talking about here, the young generation, it's basically a woke monster, Frankenstein's monster that the left have created and have fed, and which is now out of control. I will post that link on my Getter feed. People should read it because it's not coming from a sovereignty or populist source. It's just recognizing a reality that the left now, the Biden and his support is splitting right down the middle. Here's my answer to what you've said, Steve. Right, and it's the same for the United States as it is for Europe. We are now seeing, right, probably wouldn't have been able to say this without being called crazy 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago, but we are now seeing that the left's policy of importing masses of people with fundamentally different values and belief structures into the West for votes as a cynical opportunity because they're bringing people in who are going to vote for them. That has had, what we're seeing now, a national security dimension to it. That's it. Immigration from the third world has domestically here in the West a national security dimension to it. We need to have that conversation at some point, Steve, because as I said, I did say before starting, I'm against the West supporting Israel on this. That said, if the democratically elected government thinks that it is necessary to support Israel, pacify Hamas in the Gaza Strip, if that is the democratically elected government's choice, what we are seeing now is that that foreign policy is being manipulated explicitly because of people that the left have brought in to its territories. We need to have this conversation. It's an issue of national security.
Ben, we got to bounce. How to get to your social media? We're going to have you on every day this week because this is going to heat up a major battle in the House, and not just that, a very important strategic battle. We got to cut off the Ukraine situation now, and go and get some of our money back that they stole. Where do people get you, sir?
Thank you so much, Steve. On the newsletter exclusively, which people can register for on warroom.org. They can get me on Bannon's War Room, at Bannon's War Room, which is a fantastic channel on Rumble. Great comments there, great commentary on the articles there. And of course, on the Getter platform's best profile, it has every story. You just go onto that profile. It's at Steve Bannon. Go onto that profile in the morning, and every article, right, there's like 20 or so articles posted on that. Those articles together will tell you everything you need to know that day. And I'm honoured to be reposted by you, Steve, on that profile. So those are the three primary points of keeping up with me.
You've got incredible engagement. Thanks, Ben. To even make this better, we got the Grace Chong now from her star turn on the Tim Pool show. It's impossible for us to book Grace, but as soon as they give her a primetime spot on Tim Pool, she's up there front and center. Grace Chong now joins us. Grace, talk to me about the app is on fire. I want people to know, everybody that mans the ramparts, Grace, because she's always putting the War and Posse first, came up with a developer and got an app to make your life, to make you even a better weapon. Grace, where do they go? What do they do with the app?
So the app is called Bill Blaster. You can go to billblasterapp.org or find it in the Apple Store. It's not available on Android yet, but will be coming out soon. But this was created for the posse. We ask you guys, this is all about action, action, action. You guys, we ask you guys to call, and you guys did, and now we're just making it so much easier for you. It's all about the War Room Posse. We've already rattled their cages. We made changes in the house, and just imagine 100,000 of the posse members calling on the fly all at once. Where to anybody. It just makes it so much easier, and I'm just so happy that this is available now. And we're going to come out with more features, more upgrades, and just so excited because I know that the posse, I've already gotten probably now over 1,000 emails, comments, messages about how great it is and how everyone's going to use it. So I'm just like, Steve, this is something that is just the posse is going to use and really even make more changes and really rattle all their cages.
No, save our country real quickly. Where do they go again, Grace, to get this?
So you can go to billblasterapp.org, or you can find it in the Apple Store, and also warroom.org. And also, we have our new War Room merch. Go to shopwarroom.com and use Posse20 for 20% off.
Wow, not too shabby.
Lot
Chong, thanks.
going on.
The queen of the she only got 30 jobs here at the War Room. Grace, thank you, girl. See you tomorrow morning. I think we got to get her and Mo on here for a more detailed walkthrough. Billy Joe Shaver, get thee behind me, Satan. Best way to end a Monday. See you back here tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time in the War Room.
Into the mirror and I couldn't see myself. The demons that were in me had turned me wrong side out. I knew inside my soul I was headed straight for hell, but I couldn't for my life figure how to help myself. And I said, get thee behind me, Satan, for I commanded of the Lord, Jesus Christ of Nazareth, get thee behind me, Satan, for I commanded in the name of the Lord, Jesus Christ.